This is Gemara Sanhedrin Daf Dalid. We pick it up on Gimel and Beis. We are at the second wide line. Apologies for the lateness of the shiur. Hopefully next week we'll find a day to get a day ahead again so that all the shiurim will be there whenever anyone wants them. Siyata Dishmaya, all the learning should be an incredible zchos refuah shlema for Tinok ben Miriam Ahuva. The Koyach HaTorah should continue performing, being the ultimate zchos midas yoshar for a complete refuah shlema for Tinok ben Miriam Ahuva. Tanu Rabbanan, says the Gemara, a brisa, 3 lines into the wide lines. Dine mamoinis bishleisha. Monetary cases need 3 dayanim, a line that we've seen already many times. This is the din in the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, in as much as, yes, this is the din in the Mishnah, but it is not agreed upon by all. Rather, says the Gemara, Rabbi Omer b'chamisha. Rabbi says you need 5 dayanim. Why? Kidei sheyigmar hadin b'shleisha. So that you can have a roiv, could have a majority reached by 3. So if you have 5, then the roiv who are deciding will be 3. Says the Gemara, Atu betalasa milai gamar dina. I don't understand. If you have 3, can you not also have a majority? Of course you can. You could have 2. Betray with 2 of the dayanim. Explains the Gemara, Hachi Kamar, this is what it means. Mipnei shegamar din b'shleisha. You need 5. Why? So that the Gemara din. So that you could have 3 edim on 3 dayanim, on one side. Alma kasavar tlasa. Ki ksivi b'gemar din ksivi. That where is it discussing when you need 3? 3 are needed for what? Not just for the whole din Torah. No! 3 are needed for the Gemara din, and therefore you need to start with 5. Says the Gemara, Megadev bar Rav Avuha. Rav Avuha was quite surprised. He didn't understand. Asks Rav Avuha, Lameata, based on what you're saying, Tehei Sanhedrin Gedayla Tzricha Me'avhar B'an V'echad. Should need 141 dayanim. Why? So that the Gemara din could be 71. Meaning, if the way that you're learning the Torah, that the requisite numbers are not in totality of the dayanim, but rather it's in the final verdict, those amounts of voting as such. So Sanhedrin Gedayla should need 141, so that you could have 71 as a rive. Similarly, says the Gemara, should be 45. So that the Gemara din could be 23. So asks the Gemara, what exactly is this din that you're suggesting that it's all about? How many dayanim are in the Gemara din, the voting on one side of the coin? Ella, rather, says the Gemara, Asuli Shiva Mesh Amar Achmana. Says the Torah, you need 70 man. Mishas Asifas Shivim. At the time of the gathering, it's 70. Not the Gemara din, but rather the total dayanim is 70. V'shavtu Eida v'tzilu Eida nami. Mishas Shvitas Aida Hachanami. So says the Gemara the same thing when it regards to Dinei Mamanis. So what does the Torah say? V'nikra b'alabayis elu aleihim. Mishas Kariva, when you come closer. V'nikra, when you come for the din Torah Shleisha, that is when you need 3 dayanim. So says the Gemara, why does Rebbe hold you need 5? What is pshat? It can't be that it's the Gemara din needs to be with 3, because we see that's not the case. So says the Gemara, L'hainu time of the Rebbe. I'll tell you a new pshat in Rebbe. Says the pasuk Yeshayashion Elohim. 2 lines from the bottom, the Torah says, when the judges condemn, plural, trey, 2 judges. Nemar elihim lemata v'nemar elihim lemala. Malamata shnayim, it's 2 dayanim, af lemala shnayim. Vein bezin shakol, and therefore you can't have an equal bezin. V'sifaleim oid echad arei ken chamisha. So says the Gemara, Rebbe is not learning out a fundamental din with regard to the fact that the Gemara din necessarily needs 3, but rather, says the Gemara, Rebbe is psukim to corroborate and prove his point that it's not a vart of 3 judges, but rather it is 5. Rabbanan, how do they argue? Yarshi'un. Ksiv, says the Gemara, Yarshi'un without the vav. Therefore, it does not connote the multiples. Says the Gemara. So it's seemingly, what is this machlekes Rabbi and the Rabbanon? Yarshi'on is said that way, but doesn't have a vav when you write it. Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Yosi, Amar Rav Yochanan. Rabbi Yehuda ben Royetz, that's his name. Uvei Shammai v'Rav Shimon Rabbi Kiva, all these incredible Tanaim, Kulu Shir Leho, Yesh Eim L'Mikra. Fundamental concept that we've seen already many times. They all hold the Yesh Eim L'Mikra goes by the word, the way it is pronounced. And that's how Rebbe could take the word Yarshi'on and say, there's no Vav, but it's pronounced with a Vav. And therefore, when it comes to the Joshua, it's as if it has a Vav. Now, says the Gemara, whom are all these people? Where are their cases? Rebbe is Hadamar, and what we just said. Rav Yehuda ben Royitz, Tanya, 5 lines down. Shalu Talmidim es Yehuda ben Royitz, they asked the Rebbe, Ekrani, Shivim. You can read the word, Shivim. It has to do with the Tama of a Yoledes of a Nekeva. Says the Pasuk, Shivim, 70 days. Yachal, I would think, to Yoledes Nekeva, Tameya Shivim. So from here you would say that a Yoledes Nekeva needs to be Tameh for 70 days, not 14. Amr lehen, Timeh v'tier, b'zachar v'timeh, v'tier b'nekeva. So says Rav Yehuda, no. The words Timeh v'tier are used by Zachar and Nekeva. Ma kishetir b'zachar b'nekeva keflayim. Kishetima b'zachar b'nekeva keflayim. So says the Gemara, just like when the Torah says tar in the case of a Zachar, it's a double in the case of the Nekeva, 7 to 14. So too, av kishetima b'zachar b'nekeva keflayim. Tameh in the case of the Zachar is doubled in the Nekeva. After they left, Rav Yehuda went to the Talmidim and he said to them, Omar lahem yatem zukukim lekach shavuayim karinan v'yeshem lemikra. Says Rav Yehuda, you don't really need what we just said. Yatem zukukim lekach. Why? Because the word is shavuayim, 2 weeks, v'yeshem lemikra. So he's learning that it's not based on that you have double or not by Zachar and Nekeva in the days of Tama, but rather simply Yeshem Lemikra goes by the way you pronounce the word, and therefore could be pronounced, I should say, Shavuayim, which will teach us that you have 2 weeks, 14 days of Tama by Nekeva. That is Rebbe. Beishamai, what's his din? The Tanam we learned to the Mishnah. Beishamai Mrim. Kol hanisnin al mizbeach achitzayin. Anything that is placed on the mizbeach achitzayin shenastan b'matana achas, that is placed with one time the blood is placed and not two. Kiper, the halacha is that it works, it gives the tshuva. Shenamar v'dam zevachacha yishvoich. Ubachatos, when it comes to a carbon chatos, shtei matanos, the kohen has to make at least 2 matanos, 2 times he applies the dam. Is going to be suffice, say Beis Hillel and Kippur. And on this, my time of the Beis Shammai. You know why? Kronos, Koronos, Harikan Sheish, Arba, Lemitzvah, Ushtayim, La'akim. That's what Beis Shammai is going to learn, that 2 are Ikov. Rav Beis Hillel, Imrim, Koronos, says it 3 times, Harikan Arba, so only one is spelled in the plural. Gimel and mitzvah v'achas la'akif. Says the Gemara, how do you know how that is to darshan the pasuk? Ema kulu mitzvah, bepara kulu mitzvah. Excuse me. Kapara bechdei loy ashkechan. Says the Gemara, you don't get a kapara without any carbon. So avada, there's some level of carbon that is necessary. That is the second shita. The third shita of Shimon the Tanya. We learned in a brayso shtayim kol chazar shlish lafilu tavach. Gemara in Sukkah, that you need 2 full walls in the third wall of tefach. Rav Shimon Aimer Sholosh Kilchas and Raviyas Avilu tefach. B'maiko mifli. What is the machlokes of Shimon and the Chachamim? Rabbanan Savi Yishem leMesayres. Shimon Savi Yishem leMikra. Rabbanan Savri Yishem leMesayres. Says Gemara, whoa, 1 second. You're suggesting that the sheet of the Rabbanan is yesh aim limit Cyrus goes by the way it's written basukos are rekan arba, only one is written plural. Dal chad ikra lid gufei bashlu telas. Atoi asa yelchasa garata l'shlish. Lachem Moshe Misinai comes down and bumps it down from 4 to 3 in a little bit. V'kim to tefach. For Hashem in Savar, what does he hold? There again, she holds that it goes the way that you read it. You read it as if there's a vav. Tal chad krali gufei, one for itself. So how many do you have left? Bashalu arba, 4. He comes along and says, not just a tefach, not just, not a revius, but rather a tefach will suffice for the third wall. Rabbi Kiva, Titania, what's the case of Rabbi Kiva that we see that he also Yeshem Lemesayres? Rabbi Kiva, Titania, Rabbi Kiva, Minayin, the revius, time shows the Mishneh Meisim, Shemetame Ba'yel, how do you know? Shenamar, Al Kol Nefashais, Meis. How does he answer? So those are the 4 different ways of learning over here. Continues the Gemara, Maskiv law. Rav Acha bar Yaakov, Mika the Leslie Yeshem Lemikra. Rav Acha bar Yaakov says, I don't understand this whole conversation. Is there anyone who holds that there's no Aim Lemikra? It doesn't go by the way it's pronounced. Tani, we learned in a Braisa, asks Rav Acha bar Yaakov. Says the Basik, Bachalev Yimai. Says the Basik, you cannot cook it in its mother's milk. Yacha bechelep. I would have thought it means in the mother's fat, not the mother's milk, as we turn over to Talid Amid base. Amrit Yishem Lemikra. So says the Gemara, that's what I would have thought. But you have to say that it goes by the way that it's pronounced, and therefore, because it is pronounced as if it was in the plural, therefore, it is explicit that cooking milk is the isser, not fat. Therefore, that's how you're going to have to learn the pasuk. Elo, so says the Gemara, you're right. The Kuli Alma must hold Yeshem Lemikra. Rabbi Rabban Bakal if it's a different machlokes. Rabbi said Yashin needs another additional makar for more dayanim. Rabban and Savi Yarshion tehech. Whereas the Rabbanan argue and they say Yarshion tehech v'hai just refers to the aforementioned dayanim. It doesn't mean to include more. Continues the Gemara. Rav Yudim and Rayitz like Pligi Rabban Alei Beis Hillel. Where does he see this from? Did Tani learn to the rise of Chiper? Mibnei Adin Malay Dinu Nemar Bim Damim Lamata V'Nemar Dam Lama Lamadam Namur Lamata Shenasam Tanachas Keeper Aftam and Amur Lamala Shenasam Tanachas Keeper. That's one way of learning. Maybe I'll tell you Mamish Vakert. Zu Nemar Dam Bachutz V'Nemar Dam Bifnim. What's the halacha? If you're lacking one of the matanos, one of the applications, then it's absolutely nothing. So says the Gemara, that's what we learn one from the other. Continues the Gemara, what type of carbon is it comparable to? Don't bring a raya. Rav Karnis Talmid Loimar Chiber v'chiber minei hadin Kiber Aval Bishlo Nasan Ella Shleisha Kiber Aval Bishlo Nasan Ella Shtayim Kiber Aval Bishlo Nasan Ella Achas. So that's going to be from the 3 mentions of the word Kiber, says the Gemara. And we're going to conclude today with the final case that was mentioned by Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef with regard to the item being written down. Says the Gemara, what does that mean for Rav Shimon? V'Rabbanan b'hal pligi. This is their machlokes. Rav Shimon savar what? Schacha lo ba'yikra. You don't need a pasuk which is about schach. Again, this is going back to their machlokes with regards to the sukkah. For Rabbanan savri schacha ba'yikra. Rav Kiva Rabbanan b'hal pligi. And this is the machlokes. Rav Kiva savar nefashos atar. Timash Rabbanan savar nefashos. The Alma, a regular case of nefashos, mashma. But says the Gemara, the Kuli Alma, everyone is going to agree, yesh aim lemikra. So based on the entire aforementioned, little more than a amid, says the Gemara, everyone will concur Yesh aim lemikra. But why that's not so simple? As we'll pick it up from here. B'siyata d'shmaya.